back. There we go.
Jeff, I think someone in the chat set you up perfectly for our housekeeping slides.
Oh, what's that? Oh, I'm sure. Shall all gets addressed. Oh, yeah. I love it. North American Eastern Time Zone. Yes. I love it. Yes. Hopefully all questions shall be answered here.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of time for Q&A, so.
We shall. Let me go ahead and get things shared back up. Yeah, make sure that we've got. Hopefully everybody can now see my slide again. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
We good? We're good. All right. So I've got that going. All right, folks. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fantastic Fridays, where we talk about everyone's analytics origin stories. So just a little housekeeping about user groups. We are the North American Eastern Time Zone user group. There we go. We just answered that question. Affectionately referred to as NOAM East, G-N-O-M-E. Hence our little gnome icon that you would see here, right on that, on our home screen there. And you also see that on a lot of our other materials. So many of you, since you are here, are probably already members of our chapter, but if you aren't, feel free to sign up so you can hear about our future sessions. And while you are there, I always recommend signing up for other chapters as well, even if they're in other time zones, because all the user groups have great info to share, and the sessions are generally recorded so that you can watch them at a more convenient time. In fact, we even have the champions champion sessions. The Jen, help me here. I just my brain on Friday.
Office hours?
Friday.
The office hours?
The office hours. Yes, thank you. So yes, our office hours, which are fantastic time to come in and just ask questions. We love doing that with you guys. So which of course then brings us to the most asked question: Will this session be recorded? Yes, absolutely. The audio and video portions of this session are being recorded and will be posted shortly after the session to our YouTube channel. You can also watch our past recordings there, along with the recordings from other user groups. So feel free to ask questions using the session. We love having an engaged and interactive session. Now, first off, this little fun a fun slide here to show you. Introduce you very quickly to our NOAM East group. So we are Andy Lunsford. Today, what did we decide on? The cerulean
lantern.
Yeah, the cerulean lantern, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And I am Jeff Bloomer, the Cowboy Superman, and Jen Dungan, the Cardinal. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm the Cardinal. Because Adobe Red. Why not?
Yeah. All right. Then, so we are your hosts for today. And then in today's origin stories, we will be hearing from our own Jen Dungan, along with two people. Wait, maybe, all right. So let's go ahead and pause and get rid of our audio here. So we will be hearing from our own Jen Dungan, right? Along with two people. Oh, wait, maybe just one? Yes. Yes. Jen Lasser. So we had a little bit of a last minute cancellation. Sorry about that. But we will be hearing from Jen Squared today. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave it at that because, like we said, we have limited slides today. So it's very laid back. And we are going to have some, just some basic questions to kind of get things started. But I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to Andy Lunsford, who is also our other co-leader here for the NOAM East group. And I'm going to let him actually start things off with our first question and kind of just get things going. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
So let's start off a very simple one for everybody. And of course, too, I'm going to put a reminder in the chat, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll get to those as well as we're going through this. But we're going to start with the first one, the most easy one we're going to ask today, which is, what is your origin story? I would say Jen answer, but that's not clear. So whoever wants to go first.
Jen, go ahead. I feel like we needed the Spider-Man meme.
Oh,
Who's
yeah,
go
yeah.
first? Jen,
Well,
you
when
go
we're
ahead.
next to each other, I mean, all right. So I guess I'll start it off. So my origin story is basically I come from a development background. So I went through school through an image arts program, which focused on web design, graphic design, video photography, and really fell in love with the web design. And then, followed through and took an extra content webmaster design course as a, post grad. And so even back then, for those of you who have seen me on Experience League and know how much I help other people, even back then, I was always spending my labs helping everyone else and then doing my work later on at home. So, I mean, it's no surprise that that's just something I have always done, helping people. And I did a couple of contract jobs, doing web design for a little while before I got hired into the Metroland family. At the time, it was by different divisions, and I was in a division with 1.5 people. And you might be going, half? How does that work? Well, that was my manager. He was my half because he was my manager and also the manager of direct mailing. Neither of us knew how he got stuck with digital. But it was always our little joke that it was a team of 1.5. And so I worked as the sole developer in that division for about 1.5 years. And that's where I got introduced to Omniture for the very first time. Didn't have any training. I basically picked it up by reverse engineering it. If I do this, that happens. If I do this, that happens. And slowly building out, my knowledge of the tools without a lot to work with, including integrating it into our Flash designs, which was probably one of my biggest mistakes, because at the time I did not even realize the difference between a page view, S.T, and a link view in S.TL. So we had a little bit of problems there, but eventually got them fixed. But after that, my company decided that it didn't make sense for all of the newspapers to have their own digital department. So they went through, figured out who they were keeping, and stuck us all together in kind of a joint digital team. Where again, I was still a developer at that point, but I now actually had a marketer who was working on the analytics. And so I worked in tandem with them, whereas, they would come up with tagging requirements, and because I knew the sites really well, I'd be like, oh, that's not going to work because the site actually works like this, not like that. So I learned a lot from them in understanding, from the marketing side, how tagging worked, whereas I helped them with the technical side of things. Eventually, I got shifted out of development and into QA because our team needed somebody who could do performance testing and functional testing really in depth, and not just take the developers, nope, that can't be done answers, which used to happen a lot. Meanwhile, I did not do that. I had a high attention to detail and, wanted, things to work the best they could. So essentially, I got put into the QA team. And then after about 1 year, they decided not to renew the contract of our marketing person. So they're just like, oh, Jen will handle all the Adobe analytics from this point on. So I basically became half QA, half analytics. Again, still kind of a silo on my own. So I used to watch a whole bunch of webinars to understand what was going on, what new technologies were coming out. I'm pretty sure Jen was some of those webinars that I used to watch along with Eric. We were early adopters of a lot of technology because, again, I had a lot of freedom to do the analytics that I wanted to do, and my company actually supported me, which was amazing. So we were early adopters of virtual report suites, and just some of the crazy solutions that I came out with, like using S products for about 20 different uses. Yeah. Hey, if you don't have the tools to do it, well, use the one that actually is going to work and make it work for you. So I'm kind of that crazy mad scientist type person who also twiddles with that type of stuff. And then I worked under that scenario for quite a few years up until 2017, when the Metroland side of things merged again with the Toronto Star team. And so I took over the analytics for the Toronto Star and their properties. And at that point, they're like, okay, we're not going to have you do double duty anymore. Choose one. And because I had been working with the analytics so long, and I love the creativity and the flexibility and just I can do a whole bunch of weird stuff with it, and building that technology, I decided to stick with the analytics. So that's when I became like full-time analytics for the entire organization, took over the Google Analytics, took over the Parsley Analytics, took over all the pixel trackers. So yeah, and I still do that. Like that was all under me. And basically, yeah, since 2017, I've been doing all of that for our company with essentially one helper underneath me for well, most of the time, but not all of it, because there was a lot of times that I was still acting solo. So being part of the champs group, being part of the user groups, being able to collaborate with people was just an absolute eye-opener, and just so wonderful to actually be a part of, because I actually had other nerds to talk about my crazy ideas with. So that is my origin story.
Before we jump into Jen's, I do want to comment a thread that I've noticed. Like the origin story so far, and I don't know if it's just the sample size we've had, but it seems like we've had a lot of people who started off more technical, or like, oh, I was development side, or oh, I was working with the implementation side, and it was kind of like, hey, figure out how to do this, and becoming an early adopter of tools, and all of a sudden you get pulled into the wonderful world of analytics. And I don't know if just all the people we've had go through their stories on this this whole series so far, or if we're going to keep seeing that become a thread. But it's just something interesting I've noticed, because I think that's been a common thread amongst a lot of the origin stories.
Theme, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, for anyone here who doesn't come from the technical side, don't let that stop you. I mean,
Yes.
Oh, no.
seriously, be the best you can be where you are and continue to learn. That is the key to growing and to potentially becoming a future champion, because champions needs all sorts of people. So definitely, just because we have a common thread in our nerddom doesn't mean that you don't fall under that umbrella either.
No, I can tell you, I know somebody who started out working in a hair salon that ended up doing this. So it happens. It's interesting. Yep. So yeah.
No, absolutely.
Jen, so okay. So now we get to ask Jen her orange. So it's funny, Jen, yeah. Jen Lasser, Jen L.
Jen Lasser,
so
yeah.
We get to learn your origin story.
Well, so I'm breaking the mold, I think, then, because I have no idea how to implement our product. I think everyone assumes like everyone at Adobe and product knows how to do all of it, but I've always been more on the business consulting side. So after it's implemented, then how do you get the most out of it?
That's cool.
But I'll flash back. It's not that I'm not technical at all. I just don't know how to implement. Because I started when I went to school, I started in computer engineering, and I graduated in general engineering. So I switched a little bit in the engineering college, but ended up leaving with some skills that really set me up to do analytics and problem solving. And out of college, I went into consulting for the pharmaceutical industry. So that's kind of how I started. I had no idea what product management was when I was in school. Like, I don't even know if it was like a real thing. So I just knew I liked math and problem solving. So yeah, that's kind of what set me off in this consulting direction. So I did that for a couple years, and then I realized, I want to do something that is in an industry that I care about. So I went to work for Orbitz, the travel company, not the gum, because I was like, I like travel. I understand planes and hotel bookings, and so I was an analyst at Orbitz, and we would analyze things like what's the best time to put a promotion out based on bookings data. So it was kind of fun, but it was short-lived. I was there for 6 months in 2009, and then got laid off. But that actually was like the turning point in my career that set me off in the direction that I'm on. So a tip is just be resilient, and things are always going to work out. All the relationships you're building along the way, I think, will pull you to the next place. That's at least what's happened for me. So the person who laid me off brought me to the next place. And it was a financial services company. And that's really where I was introduced to the world of marketing and marketing analytics and Adobe Site Catalyst. So that was the first time that I had used the product that I'm now a product manager of, which is kind of fun. So yeah, there I ran the marketing programs. I did display, paid search, affiliate, a small business, so I was just doing it all, and the measurement of the marketing we were running. And I met there's a couple people I kind of attribute my career to and like where I've landed. And that's where I met my first person. His name is Mark. He actually bailed me out of an interview at that company. The CMO asked me, "What are the 4 M's of marketing?" And I was like, "What?" Like I had never done marketing specifically. And thankfully, Mark, it was like they were both interviewing me. So he responded, and we still joke about it to this day. I have no idea what the 4 M's are. And it's not necessary to know, honestly. But he was great. And he actually is the one that eventually brought me to Adobe. So that financial services company I was at for a couple of years in Chicago. And then I switched over to Ogilvy, which is an advertising agency. And I started to do media analytics. So I worked with the display media planners to distribute their budget, like find the most effective display networks to advertise on. And that job brought me to New York because I was flying out here a lot for work and the customer I worked on. So I moved to New York. And that was another turning point in not my career, but my life, because I met my husband at Ogilvy, New York. So kind of fun. I moved out here just because I was flying out here, and I ended up again like having another pivotal change in my life, which was awesome. So I was at Ogilvy for a couple years, and then I came to Adobe. Mark, 2 jobs prior, was like, "You should come over here. You'd be great at it." So I was like, "All right," and I started in consulting. So I was in Adobe consulting for 5 years, and it was great. Like I loved the variety of customer problems. The very first customer I got on the phone with, the nicest person ever. We're friends to this day. It just built a lot of good relationships and really helped me deeply understand Adobe Analytics, what customers need. It exposed me to a variety of industries. So I really liked my experience in consulting and would recommend for anyone that's like doesn't know exactly what you want to do. Consulting gives you such a variety of experiences, and then you can figure it out from there. So then I reached my last step. I co-presented with Ben Gaines at Summit, and I was like, I want to be Ben. Ben's awesome. He's the second pivotal person in my career. And he was great. He's just got such presence. You all know him. He's awesome. And in my consulting role, I wanted to like impact the product, but I wasn't able to actually do it. I would just loft things over to the product team and then they would do it. So I was like, I want to shift into product. And thus began my 1.5-year campaign of bothering Ben to open up a role on his team and let me join it. They eventually said, okay, but I had to move to Salt Lake and interview 9 times, an internal move 9 times and move to join the product team. And it was a leap, but I mean, so thankful that I did it. I've been on the product team now for 8 years. I'm back in New Jersey now, which is where my husband's from and kind of the area we met. And, you know, everything is going great, growing in my career, you know, meeting new people. And yeah, it's been quite the journey, but roots are down. 13 years at Adobe now. I think I'll be here for a little bit longer. That's my origin story with all the weavy windiness of it.
That's awesome. Another thread I'm noticing too is a lot of people have had touch bases with both the consulting world and also just being on the other side of it. I feel like that's a common thing, especially in this industry, is kind of like being on both sides. And I would second your like point about spending some time in consulting is such a great way to figure out like what really excites you, what kind of work you're really like into. Because I started off as an analyst, like I think for my last origin story, I started off like on the SEO analyst side, working in the agency world, and I worked all the way over to the implementation side of analytics. I mean, I still kind of touch like points of SEO, and I like SEO a lot, but I am nowhere near as knowledgeable as I used to be, and it's like such a great opportunity. Like I think it's a really good message I wanted to kind of repeat for everyone on the call. If you don't know exactly where you're at, I would take a look at the consulting world because you will get to try a lot of things because there are a lot of things going on and there are a lot of needs for a lot of hats. And if you like wearing hats, that's a great place to try on many.
or just work for a newspaper that will put you in all those hats themselves.
Yes, that is also, yeah, the small business or the places where they make you wear many hats. That's also a good spot. So I guess a question to the group. What's the biggest villain or so like villain you've had to fight in your career or problem you've solved? And how did you approach it?
Well, Jen, do you want to go first this time?
Sure, yeah. Well, this is actually like a funny story. In my first job, I was in analytics at the pharma company. I made a data mistake and I got absolutely reamed out by someone in leadership. And there's this, you know, moments like that she made me cry, honestly. But you have to overcome them. So little villains like that. Fun fact, she popped up 15 years later as a customer of Adobe and was trying to get me to answer questions. And I'm like, I remember you. So that's a tip. Be nice. This is a small world. Like everyone knows everyone. We're going to cross paths again. Just be nice to each other and know that like mistakes happen. So yeah, I mean, that's a specific story. I think the villain and the time I had to be, again, the most resilient was the layoff. But like I said, I feel like everything kind of works out for the best. So
All
how about you, Jen?
I guess for me, the biggest villain that I normally come up with is things breaking that shouldn't have broken, or somebody going and changing something and not telling me that I needed to go do regression testing and then finding out, oops, we have no analytics on this page, or oops, all the stuff that I just coded is not working. But you're right, like stuff happens. It's not, you know, you don't go back and you know, oh my God, you broke this. It's like, okay, let's work together. How do we fix this? So, I mean, it's the villain, but it's also like how do I turn this villain into like an ally? Like how do we build on this? How do we improve process from this, and prevent it from happening in the future? And of course, there's always going to be stuff that breaks. There's always going to be things that go wrong, but it's, you know, about, you know, putting the work in, making sure that you get it fixed as soon as possible, and then just apologize to the business going, okay, we have a little blip in the data. Oops. We'll average it out. We'll find ways to try and figure out, a proxy for what was missed. But, uh, and yeah, that also comes up with some creative solutions too. When something breaks, it's like, okay, can I get this another way by doing a complex segment, or by looking at this, or by, augmenting it with, some of our backup data from, I hate to say it, but Google Analytics or Parsley or something like that. Where, yeah, no, I don't like using it either, especially since GA4. Sorry, GA4 fans on this call, if there's any, but it's such a pain in the butt to use. It's like, I can do this in 5 minutes in Adobe. I can spend 2 hours in Google trying to pull out the same thing. Not a fun time, but yeah, sometimes you do what you have to do.
Absolutely. Oh, well, you were describing just like the things that pop up. I just got this image of you as Spider-Man, because I feel like it's like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of like, oh, this small crime happening here. It's like this small thing breaks. I'm swinging in to fix it, and then like other one, and then meanwhile, like kind of time to communicate back to leadership. That's like the J. Jonah Jameson, where it's just like why is analytics wrong here? Like, no, I fixed it. I fixed it. This was something we caught. That was just going through my head the entire narrative. But I think that's a good point. Is I think there's a lot of like there's the villains, which is like the arch nemesis, which is always like from my perspective, like data confidence, and like other ones that fall into that. And depending on what your role is and what your organization's like big like overarching goals are, you have different nemesis. But then there's always still like the building the Justice League, kind of getting that systems in place that you can respond to the small things as they break. Because just because it's not a big villain doesn't mean it still can't cause problems. It's causing a problem. It just is a different severity of it, and being able to address that, I think, is a huge thing.
That's true. And Jen's advice about being nice, honestly, that also works too in building confidence in the data. Because when people come to you and they're not sure about, is this correct? Deal with them like, go through it. Take the extra time. Like, I do that all the time. Like, I'll sit down, we'll look at the data, I'll go, look, I'll test it, I'll show that it's collecting, I'll show, the results, we'll go through it together, and I'll try to actually build that confidence by, taking time out of my busy day to make sure that that person feels heard, that they feel, that I am like, I'm not just blowing them off, and that, the data that they've got is in fact correct, or maybe it's not correct. Maybe we find a bug together and it's like, okay, let's deal with this, or what can we do to make it better? And that's kind of the way that I've always sort of treated it, no matter who I'm working with.
Yep. And I will say, we all lose our tempers. It definitely happens. I mean, because we get frustrated. Things will happen over and over and over again, and it's like, so all of us are I mean, we all have those moments where it's like, and you lose it. But then the thing is then you have to come back, and it's like, okay, we've all had that situation. But the thing is you have to come back then and say, okay, we know what's going on. we know how to fix it. But usually sometimes it's going to be a long track going back to it, and other times there might be alternative solutions. I mean, I've had a situation that I've been dealing with for a while, and we know that we've got to get, and we know that it's not going to be a quick fix, but fortunately we do have, an alternate, solution that's also capturing data at the same time. So, which is nice. So it's like, we can point to that and say, hey, this is also capturing data in a little bit different way. So it's not the best, but we're actually able to get it, just a little bit differently, longer term. But yeah, until they get that the other, sorry, I can't talk about specifics. But yes, it is a fun, not so fun challenge until we get things handled. But yeah, and how personalities like to clash sometimes. So
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing I think like that comes to me a lot, which is just kind of like, if you're losing your temper, means is losing your temper is human. It means you're passionate enough and you care about the work enough that
exactly
you have a passionate view on it. The big is controlling your temper is where you show leadership, like controlling and reining it in and being able to kind of say, you know what, I care a lot about this, but how does this work? that's where it's the opportunities for growth, because it's always that fine juggling act of you want to be passionate, but you also don't want to shout out everybody else, which
Exactly.
is a thing I constantly struggle with. I feel like I'm constantly shouting other people out. So it's something that I try to rein in and think about, make sure that I'm taking like
Exactly.
things as well. It's that constant balance.
Yeah.
What type of heroes do you both see are going to be needed in the coming years? What gaps do you need to, like, in the industry, do you see that need to be filled by future heroes?
Ah,
I would say, and we mentioned it earlier, actually, like dynamic people that can wear many hats. I think gone are the days of like specializing in one specific thing, especially as our industry changes pretty rapidly. I'd say just take those opportunities to learn new things, to make yourself well-rounded. I've kind of built my a brand at Adobe as like being able to handle whatever I'm given, minus implementation, because I don't know how to do that. But everything else. So yeah, I would say like find opportunities to try new things, push yourself out of your comfort zone and make yourself more dynamic. Me presenting with Ben, like I'm not a public speaker. I thought I wasn't, but now I am. And that opened the door to this next step. So, find those opportunities in your world as well.
yeah, that's perfect. Like, and again, when you've got access to say QA or dev environments, play. I mean, you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you won't know until you try. And you can't really test that in something like production, because if things go south, you might screw up a bunch of stuff. But in dev, that's where I test a lot of my crazy solutions. Like, okay, I've got this idea. Is it going to work? Let's play with it. Let's flush this out. Let's see if this is actually going to do what I think it's going to do, so that I can, use this to better the analytics. And also, I'm going to say, I think we need, no offense, Jen and the Adobe, everything going AI, but I'm going to say people to push against AI, because I really don't think that AI can do certain things. I don't believe that, AI to analyze your data is necessarily going to tell you the full story, because unless it understands how your site works, how things are tracked, what is being collected, where it's being collected, how is it going to tell you an actual real story? It doesn't know those nuances. So for me, like that's that, we've got to make sure that we are, standing up for our jobs, but B, also making sure that that company doesn't just say, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to get AI to tell me what's going on. We don't need a team of people to write reports for us anymore. Well, I mean, that's kind of like throwing a dart at a dartboard and going, yep, I got this many views today. We want to make sure that that actual intelligence is being, prioritized over top of something that can have delusions or make stuff up or just get things wrong because it doesn't see the full picture.
The hallucinations, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we discussed a little bit in our last session on this that unfortunately Jen, you weren't able to make, but we're so glad we can make this one, because I think that was a thread that got brought up, and I think the big takeaway that I got from that discussion with Jason was like making sure we keep the human connection, like especially like regardless of like everyone's personal opinions on AI, like the truth of the matter is that some organizations will be trying it, some organizations are going to say nope, I'm not going to touch that, and people are going to have personal like opinions here or there. But in our industry, we're going to be put in front of challenges of tagging analytics, understanding how to report like analytics on AI, whether we support it or are against it, because likelihood is that there's going to be some pilot that involves it. And I think the important thing when we're doing all this is just to really stress the human component and the human connection, because that's the thing that AI can't do. AI should be an enabler to make people better and more productive and more able to scale and kind of expand their influence. It shouldn't be something where it's like, oh, it's going to do everything for me. It's going to be great. Because I think if we look at it that way, teams are going to try that. Some teams are already trying that, and they are running into huge problems when they view it as this is going to replace headcount. And to the other piece you mentioned about just like trying out the tools, getting into them, I think that's like a huge thing. People getting like just exposure to what they're working on, because the more you learn, the more you can try and find new ways of doing things. On top of that, um, this user group, like Experience League, like the community, like the amount of like in the past 5 years I've seen of it going from this is my secret sauce, this is the way I build this, and this works great as all my things, it slices and dices. No, you can't see it. Absolutely not. But I can sell it to you, or I can do that kind of mindset, like this is my thing, I'm not gonna let anybody see it, has changed so dramatically. People being like, here's how I do this. And then people saying, you know what, I do this on top of that. And it's kind of, oh my gosh, I didn't think of it that way. And these discussions are where I think so much like new innovation and just process like
Yeah.
is born from. And it really goes to like a quote I like to say a lot when it regards to innovation, which is the best ideas I've ever had have been off the back of somebody else's idea. There was not any single idea where I was like, I own this idea from inception to implementation. Nothing, nothing of mine. It's always been built on the back of another great idea. And that's why the community exists. And I think we need to tap into that more to keep expanding that growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, and not even just the analytics community. If you have the opportunity, buddy up with a developer in your organization, make friends with the QA team, work with all the people that are involved in making that website a success, because there is so much you can learn from a developer, even if you aren't a developer. Even working with them and just saying, how does this work? How can I understand what's going on better? By you telling me, what are the flows? What is the expected flow? What are the potential alternate flows that users can take that you have to account for? So again, you don't necessarily have to be an expert in everything, but try to learn and try to understand and try to, partner up with people who are experts in those areas, because the more you can learn from them, the better your job will be, the more understanding you have to put into the analysis or the implementation or the writing of the requirements, whatever focus you're doing in the analytics sphere, that will help.
Absolutely, absolutely. The last thing that kind of like just really hit up that point home. I'm stealing it from Maurice Levy, who is the like Publicist Group fame. No silo, no solo, no bozo, which I think kind of really like focuses that partnering up, integration, and like that collaborative feeling. And I think that's something that's so important. Like, and I think whenever I've seen that happen, you just see just success cascade, and it's amazing. So I love this. Like this question's my favorite because I feel like it just opens up and it really kind of talks through like what like people are like should be doing like as a whole, and I think it really gives people an opportunity to figure out where they slot in this wonderful industry. Um, what future threats do you foresee to the state of the analytics world that you are working to stop?
So my answer to this is going to be AI, but not. I don't think it's a threat. I think it can feel threatening, but I think it's something that, I mean, in my role, I'm looking to embrace it for kind of two different reasons. One, I love efficiency. I've always loved efficiency. So I'm like, how can AI make me more efficient? And I've been using it a lot for helping me write things. Like I can basically get 80% of the gist down, but that last like 20% of an email or even a review, you sit there, you spend hours like fine tuning it, finding the right adjectives, and like AI can help just take that right away and make me more efficient. So that's kind of one way I've been thinking about how can it improve my life and what I do. And then also as a product manager, like how can we help empower analysts in our products be more efficient? Not I'm aligned with Jen and everyone that spoke on AI. Like I think it's a balance of technology and human. So figuring out how technology, AI can take that first step, and then humans can bring it home with things only humans can provide, like empathy and context and all of that, like you mentioned earlier, Jen. So yeah, my answer is AI, but not as a threat. It's something that we should turn into and think about, like how can this be great for us and help us advance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm completely 100% against AI, but just for certain things, because like use it as a tool, but make sure you're overseeing what it's coming back with.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
because
I agree with that.
I mean, the people who just trust it blindly, that's not helpful at all. And you're going to just get problems if you just say, do this for me, and then submit it. So no, I agree with that. I guess just the threat that I would say to work against is, again, just making sure that AI isn't replacing us, that it's augmenting us. Making sure that companies see the value in people, in their employees, in what we can do, instead of just replacing us with a machine, because then we're just going to end up with Skynet, and no one wants that.
It's fun. It's a funny joke, but it is kind of like, you do have people talking about the singularity and all that fun stuff. It's like, what point are you not joking? But no, I think that's a good call out. I think it goes into like a constant thread that I think things keep coming back to, with AI in particular, and just data in general, is the concept of garbage in, garbage out. The concept has been around, God, I think since like early 90s, if not earlier. And it just keeps resurfacing its head. And it's kind of, I think one of the things that I at least have been really grateful for AI kind of being a new buzzword and kind of being the new big thing, has been that a lot of working forward of items has been, oh my gosh, yeah, we're gonna use AI to make this better. We're gonna have it read our documentation, and you find out your documentation is really bad. Because it gives really bad responses. You're like, well, why did it say that? And it's like, oh, because it does say that. And it kind of highlights like some process failings. And I'm a big process guy. I've always been a big process guy. I love the concept of like, I think processes, and maybe it's because of just being a technical background, but I think processes aren't limiting, they're freeing. Because sometimes there's a view of like, oh, doing this process is very bureaucratic. Doing it that way allows your mind to focus it on the important things, rather than, did I cross this T right? Did I dot this I right? Did I set up the event this way in report suite? No, like it's more of, here is what we do stepwise to enable this, and what we do process wise for this. It lets your brain kind of take the freedom and capacity to say, well, how does this connect to something else? And I think that's where, like, with the threats of like AI, I think the one thing that we have as a potential ally is just, it's really a lot of other problems that exist from garbage in, garbage out, that are going to be very much big roadblocks to fixing that. So it can't be fully replacing us because of that.
Yeah.
No,
So-
that's all. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I was gonna say, so final question. Jen, what do you love most about your work, and how would you encourage newcomers to grow their strengths and build their own origin stories?
Jen, me?
You, Jen.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
So what I enjoy most is the variety of people I get to work with, like the variety of customers, the variety of internal folks. It's a lot of fun. It's also challenging, but in those challenges, I'm growing. I'm hearing different perspectives. I'm learning from them. Like you said, Andy, like, I don't know if I've had an original idea, but like I come up with ideas by talking to lots of people. I have to make a lot of decisions in my role, and it's easier to do that with a lot of perspectives. So that's the thing I enjoy most. And I'd say for newcomers, create that space for new perspectives. Don't think you have to do everything on your own. Build a good kind of, I call it like a cross-functional group, people that are sitting in different roles. Jen, you just said like, developers, maybe the business side, and just be willing to learn from them, be flexible. Don't think you're always right. Something I've had to learn. And like create those relationships. Like I mentioned, besides having to interview for the Adobe switch, I didn't really have to interview after I started my career, because I built good relationships, built a good network up. So I would say, definitely do that for yourself as you find your way to what you want to do in your career.
Yep. I guess, and for me, again, I also love the variety of the work that I do. Because again, I work with the entire life cycle of the analytics, from writing the requirements all the way down to like building out reports, but also just dealing with the different people and the different challenges. While I work, for a newspaper, we do have other business lines, and so it's often a, hey, I'm not thinking about this as a publication. I'm thinking about this as almost like a mini retail site, or I'm thinking about this as a directory site, or I'm thinking about this as such and such site. So that variety keeps things fresh, keeps things interesting. And as for helping to encourage other people, again, I always try to make sure that people value their ideas. Try stuff out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but keep trying. And so in Experience League, when I'm talking with people, I might be giving them suggestions, but I also when other people like post their ideas, it's like, try a combination. Like, hey, that's a great idea. This is a good idea. Try your own stuff. Don't be afraid to fail. And of course, just keep at it. I mean, you know more than you think you do. So don't come and look at us and go, oh my God, like I'll never be up in a panel like this, because you absolutely could. Because even back 4 years ago, I would have said the same thing.
I want to add to that. I love that, because I think at every spot in my career, I'm like, man, I'm not doing anything that cool. And now that I sit on this side, especially when we do like calls for analytics rock stars, I'm like, people need to know that things they're doing are actually pretty cool, and more people would want to hear it. So plug for submitting to Rockstar, but just know that like everything you're doing is probably new to somebody else and worth sharing and kind of just spreading the knowledge around. So I love that. +1.
Well, and I need to also do a little plug here as well. Jen Lasser, believe it or not, was a stepping stone to helping me getting into Adobe Champions once upon a time. If you remember, Jen, you actually coordinated with me once upon a time with getting images. If people, anybody who uses Adobe Analytics, if you use Adobe Analytics, you can thank Jen for helping me with doing images in Adobe Analytics. So the fact that you can actually bring in an image in Adobe Analytics, Jen worked with me quite a while back to test that capability. So between working with her and then a gentleman named Jensen Belliston contacted me and said, hey, have you ever thought about submitting to become an Adobe champion? And I said, I mean, do I qualify and all that stuff? And so, I mean, it was, that once upon a time. And then Jen, you did this really great session called, it was Mean Tweets. Do you remember that Mean Tweet session? And
yeah, I think Eric, Ben, and I read off tweets that people said to us.
So yes, so
tweets.
one of my comments ended up getting pulled into that, and it was like, so I remember that whole session. So it was a number of those little things, but it was just one of those little things it was one of those stepping stones. I mean, it's not all that, but I mean, it takes a lot of work. You can't just depend on one little thing to get yourself into doing this kind of stuff. I mean, you have to be really, it's a lot of hard work in order to become, to get into the, the community advisors, to become an Adobe champion, to go through, experience makers, anything of that kind of stuff. I mean, Katie Klein, who's an Adobe champion and an experience maker award recipient. All of those things, it takes a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, it is possible for anyone to do. And so, but Jen, I just had to acknowledge that you were part of that path. So yes.
That was a great partnership, and I'm super happy our paths crossed early.
You bet.
Through your advocacy for that feature.
Same.
Look,
Well, and I still remember
origin.
I still remember that you are, and I still also remember that you are a basketball fan. I will never forget that.
Very good memory. Yeah. Huge basketball fan, huge golf fan now. So if anybody ever wants to chit chat.
Well, we've got a few minutes
left.
Oh,
the mean tweets. The mean tweets. Oh, Andy's asking if we should bring the mean tweets back. That's funny.
Yeah, please don't. I'm the recipient of the mean
that would be up to you
thanks.
guys to go back and seek them out. I'll tell you what, that was so funny. That was such a funny session.
It was. I'll have to see if I can dig that up. We usually record stuff
Yeah, it's out there. I know it's out there somewhere. That was a
Like,
funny session. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
Frederick was in there. Of course, Frederick's gonna
Oh
be in
yeah,
there.
I can imagine that. Like
They were
you
none
probably
of
make
them were
half of his
credited.
content.
Not a single one of them were credited. They just brought him up, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was me."
Oh man. We'll share our
Oh,
YouTube link. It's probably on there somewhere.
yeah. Well, we got like what 4 minutes left. Do we have any questions from the audience? I mean, do you have anything that you'd like to ask for Gen Squared here before we end our sessions, or anything you wanted to say? Wow.
Not all at once.
Right, I know.
They're
You
all
stunned
asking
them.
at once. They just jammed up the entire chat system.
know,
you
right?
know, like,
Yep.
Well, also remember you were muted when we switched to recording this. So if you joined and then the recording came on, you were muted. So if you're talking right now, we cannot hear you.
Yep. Well,
So the teacher had
It
in
is.
class, like, any questions?
it's Friday before the break. I think everybody is just saying,
Anybody have any fun holiday plans? I'll ask one. Does anybody have any fun holiday plans?
yeah, fun holiday plans.
That's for everybody.
yeah.
Huh?
I don't know if mine qualifies as fun holiday plans or just nerdy holiday plans, but I'm honestly going to be
Qualifies.
working on Adobe stuff.
I
Well,
know
it's
that
something you like, right? It's
It
Adobe's-
is something I like, so it's fun to
Okay,
me. But
then
everyone
yes,
else would
that's
be
holiday
like,
plans.
"Why are you doing more work on your vacation?" And I'm
That's fine.
my word.
As long as it's not doing stuff you don't like, because then that's work.
Oh
It has
no,
to be stuff
minute
you like.
32-ish. What's minute 32-ish? I'm afraid to ask. Oh,
I think that's
is
the
minute
mean
30
tweets. I
is
think I
that
found it.
me? Is that minute 32-ish? Is that mine? Or
Well, it's the start of the section. I don't remember.
oh, it's just the start of the section. Okay.
Yeah. But there's some
That's
funny
too
ones in
funny.
there,
Oh, there are.
including what a waste of time.
Oh my word. Mine was, hey Adobe, you're a media company, aren't you? Or something along those lines.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh my word.
Well, thanks for
Now,
having
hold
me,
on.
all. This was great.
Yes,
Yeah.
this has been
Now-
great.
before we finish recording, just because the chat is not recorded, I am going to just turn that YouTube link into a QR code for the recording
Yes.
and just throw it up on the screen so that people who are watching this later can get it.
That's a good
Which
call.
one? I think there's a couple in there.
Okay, I will start with the mean tweets, the last one.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question because I'm looking at that link for the Rockstar Tips for Summit. The deadline says the 15th. Is that deadline been updated?
Oh, I'd have to check with Eric. But you know what? Submit, because if the form lets you send it in, it'll be great for whenever the next time is that we want to share stuff. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
just better that Eric
Perfect.
knows who you are and knows that you have tips to share.
There you go.
Okay, so this QR code right here, that is the mean tweets.
There you go.
And I'm just going to also grab.
Rockstar Tips.
Yep. Actually, well, I'm going back in backwards order. This is just the Adobe YouTube channel, so there should be lots of content for people to read there. I'll just leave that up for a few seconds. Again, people can pause this, so it should be good.
Yep.
And then, well, the Rockstar Tips again has a time date. Like, has it been extended?
I don't think
We don't know.
so, but I would just submit
Never know.
anyway, and then we know about you, and maybe we can work you in.
Okay,
that the whole
just keep
thing?
in mind, this is for the 2025 summit. So if you are watching this beyond this date, like a couple of years from now, if this is 2026, this link will not work. Because we all know that videos live for a long time. So all right. Well, with that, Jeff, do you want to give us a superhero's farewell?
superheroes farewell. I will just
Yes.
say thank you everyone for coming, and Excelsior.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Jen,
you.
and
Thank you
for
very much.
being
Bye.
here.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Everybody have a great holiday.